In this video, I'm going to show you exactly how I scaled this Facebook ad account that you see on screen to generating $548,668.14 in profitable revenue in a single month. And we scaled this ad account from spending $78,000 in the month prior to over $300,000, so $323K in spend, which was basically tripling their ad spend. And we did so profitably, taking their total volume of purchase conversion value from $168,000 to $548,668,14. And if you're a Shopify brand that's currently stuck at around 6 figures per month, and you want to scale like this brand did here from low 6 figures to multi 6 figures or even 7 figures per month, and you want to scale your Facebook ads to allow you to do so, then make sure you stick around until the end of this video, because I'm going to be walking through exactly how I did this step by step, how I set the targets, and then how I structured the ad account to be able to generate results like these in literally a single month. So that way you can take this and replicate it into your ad account so you can start scaling right now. And before we dive in, if you're interested in having me run your ads for you, then check out the first link in the description, because I have a couple spots open up for one-on-one consultation calls. So hit that first link if you're interested. Otherwise, make sure you stick around to the end, and let's go ahead and dive in. So we're going to talk through, as I mentioned, how to scale, or how we scale this Facebook ad account to this revenue target and basically triple their ad spend profitably. And I'm going to walk through how you can basically do this for your brand as well. Now, it's important to define the reason why you clicked on this video and some of the problems that plague most brands that are stuck in that 50 to 100, 150K mark per month. This is the most This is the most common problem that I see creep up, or that when I talk to brands, usually comes down to one of these three things. Number one is every time you increase the budgets, your ROAS takes a massive hit. So you try scaling, ROAS tanks, you panic, and then you drop the spend back down. You're testing creatives, but when you scale them, they fizzle out. So you might have a testing campaign set up, and then you try to bring it into a scaling campaign, increase the budget, and then it flatlines. And then lastly is it feels like no matter what you do, you're handicapped to a certain spend. And the reason why I'm laughing as I'm talking through this is because this can be one of the most frustrating things as a media buyer, as a brand owner, is when you feel like you've exhausted all of your options. You've tested countless creatives, you've tested cost caps, lowest cost, new countries. You basically tested everything under the sun in your Facebook ad account. And it feels like you are like handicapped to a certain spend. It feels like Meta has a personal vendetta against you to limit how much you can spend on your ad account. And if you feel that way, or if you feel, as I'm saying that, you kind of feel the emotions riling up, trust me, I've been there. I'm a founder as well, and I've dealt with these issues. So I know firsthand exactly how painful and frustrating these problems can be. Now, in order to overcome those problems, we need to bridge the gap of what you're missing as a founder or chief marketing officer, whatever, if you're trying to scale and you can't. So most of the time when brands are trying to scale, they're missing one of two things. Either number one, they haven't clearly defined what scaling actually means for the business. And you'd be surprised how many times I've asked a brand, like, okay, you want to scale, like, what does that mean for you? Like, how much do you want to scale? What are you trying to do, like, in scaling? Like, what does scale mean for you? And number two is you don't have targets to shoot for as the increased spend. So you'll often hear brands, or every time I talk to a brand, they'll say, oh, I need a 3+ return on ad spend in order to make advertising work. And then I'll go, why? And usually they'll tell me some story, or they'll talk about certain things about the business, but they'll never actually tell me why they need a 3+ return on ad spend or whatever that target is. So in order to actually be able to scale as easily as we did for this account that I just showed you in the beginning of this video, you need to define what scaling actually means. So we need to first define what we're trying to do. And then we actually have to set targets that we can aim for to increase spend. So we know whether or not our decisions in the ad account by ways of increasing spend are actually leading to the results that we want. And the result that we want is ideally however we're defining scale in the ad account. Forgot who said this, but there's someone who said if I had like 1 hour to cut a tree, I would spend 59 minutes sharpening the axe and then 1 minute actually cutting. So that's kind of what we're doing in this step here. So what is scaling? Let's go ahead and define what that is. So I have a bunch of different definitions here, and we'll talk through basically what that means. But I would say for most growth stage brands, so if you're in the $1 million to $5 million annual range and you're bootstrapped, meaning you've done everything yourself, you don't have any outside funding, 99% of the time, when you say you want to scale, it's typically because you want more profit in the bank account. And whatever you're going to do with that profit, there's a multitude of different things. Most commonly, people want to reinvest back into the business. They want to expand into new products. They want to be able to hire more staff and overall just turn the business into more of a profitable venture, which makes total sense. Now, for funded brands, this might mean something different. So I've worked with tons of brands that just say, you know what, Anthony, this is my budget for the year. I need as many new customers. I need as many customers through the door as you can possibly generate. So that's totally different, but 99% of the time, and probably 99% of you watching this, when you want to scale, what you want is actually more profit in the bank account. So if we define scaling by, let me just drag this down here. So if we define scaling as increasing the volume of our ROI, or in other words, more profit in the bank account, which means $1 of profit in the bank account, then the effectiveness of our increase in ad spend, so when we scale and how we measure whether or not our scale is effective, should be directly measured by how much incremental volume of profit we generate. If this is our goal, more profit in the bank account, then scaling is working when we are generating more profit in the bank account. That is it. So once we have this definition of scale and we've defined what scaling actually is, that will add so much clarity and that will create a lot of clarity as to what your next steps are. And so our decisions should therefore be informed by volume of profit, not ROAS. So going back to up here, again, most brands will say, I increase my budget and my ROAS takes a hit. But whether or not the ROAS takes a hit is completely irrelevant if our goal is scaling, as we just defined as more profit in the bank account. ROAS is a proxy for profit. It doesn't tell you how much profit is actually hitting your bank account. If I hit a 5 return on ad spend, that doesn't tell me what my net profit EBITDA is at the end of the day, or how much money is hitting my bank account. And a 5 return on ad spend on 100K in spend versus $1 million in spend are two totally different scenarios. So our decisions need to be directly informed by volume of profit, right? And if you've attempted scaling in the past and reduced the budget back down, then it's likely that you are fixated on what's happening to your ROAS, not your volume of profit. I rarely hear working with brands that are successful in this 50 to 150K range. You know what? Every time I scale, I can't seem to generate enough incremental volume in my ad spend to be able to create more profit or to be able to create more contribution profit, right? It's always my ROAS is going down. And we've just logically walked through why that is not the appropriate metric or benchmark when deciding whether or not our scale is effective and how to make scaling decisions. So now that we know what scaling is, and now that we know what the problems are when we look at ROAS, let's talk through how to actually set targets in terms of scaling ad spend. So we end up in the scenario where we're at here, and this is a very rudimentary example. And okay, Anthony, I get what you're saying. You're probably at this point in the video. All right, if I can't use ROAS as a benchmark to assess whether or not scale is effective or whether or not scale is actually working, what benchmark or what things should I be looking at to determine whether or not scaling is actually working, so then I can know how to scale from that. So I have a very rudimentary example to demonstrate essentially here why ROAS does not matter so long as you are generating enough incremental volume with your ad dollars in terms of incremental contribution profit with your ad dollars. Or we could think of it, get rid of contribution profit, just gross profit. Okay. So let's walk through scenario one. In this example, it's a very simple instance here. So ad spend assumption here is 50,000. Our MER is 3, or our blended return on ad spend. So if we're spending 50 at a blended return on ad spend of 3, then we have 150K in revenue. And that's where most brands usually stop measuring the effectiveness of their ads. And if we actually peel this back a little bit, all we're seeing here, or the only things that we've added here, are how much actual profit is being generated, very simply based on the cost of goods and the shipping and handling. So if you have a 55% gross margin, that means here's how much gross profit that you actually have left after you pay for cost of goods. And this is obviously excluding operational expenses, your fixed costs, variable costs, all that good stuff. It's a rudimentary example to demonstrate this point home. So here's how much day one profit we're actually making on that 3 return on ad spend. And as you can see in scenario 3, this is us scaling our ad budget. We're going from 50,000 to 80,000. And then you'll notice here the return on ad spend drops. And again, this is where most brands will go, I was at a 3 return on ad spend. Now I'm at a 2.75. I'm probably going to drop down further. you need to reduce the budget back down. Let's drop the ad spend and go back to that nice, comfortable 3. And then they just stay there for like 5 to 6 months and they can never scale. So what's actually happening though is if we get rid of ROAS as the primary indication of whether or not scale is being effective. And we know that volume of profit is the main indicator of whether or not scale is effective. Then what you need to be looking at is how much volume of profit is this incremental ad spend generating. And so if we peel back the layer, we'll actually see that at lower efficiency levels, so long as we're supplying a sufficient enough increase in volume, we can offset the loss in efficiency with more volume. And we actually stand to make more profit at a higher ad spend level, at a worse ROAS, so long as we're supplying sufficient volume with our ad spend. So as you can see, we went from making 31K at a 3 return on ad spend, and now we're making 40K at a 2.75 return on ad spend. And this is also excluding the impact, the incremental impact that happens to the LTV as we acquire more new customers. So at 3 MER and 50K in spend, we've got 2,700 customers. Now, this is, again, a very rudimentary example. Those customers are going to come back and return, and then we can calculate based on the 3-month customer LTV, how much more incremental profit those customers will generate over the long term. So if we're getting more customers because we're spending more, we're also going to make more volume of profit on those customers in the future, assuming that the retention rate and AOV and LTV stays the same, right? So we go from not only are we making more on day 1, but we're also making more over the long term. And this is an example that happens basically all the way like in perpetuity. As long as we're increasing our ad spend and supplying sufficient volume, we can stomach a loss in efficiency. So 2.5 MER, right? We're making only about $3,000 more, but we're still making more. We're not losing money just because we went from a 3 to a 2.5. And you'll notice here what's happened is we've actually tripled our ad spend. We're making more profit on day 1, and we're making almost 2x the total volume of profit on the 3-month LTV. We extend this all the way out to the most extreme example to where we've gone from a 3 MER to almost a 2. We basically dropped our return on ad spend by an entire point, but now we're at triple the ad spend. We're still making a higher volume of profit than we were in scenario 2 or in our baseline example. And we're also making way more on the 3-month LTV because we're acquiring way more customers. Don't forget the downstream effects of what going from 2,700 customers and tripling that to 6,200 customers will have on the business, because all those customers are then going to come back, assuming you have a solid business model, and that means more profit into your bank account because it's all revenue that you're not having to pay for. So assuming that operational expenses and your margins stay fixed, assuming that as you increase your ad spend, you're not hiring on all these new people and you're not expanding into new warehouses preemptively, assuming all of that is going to stay fixed, you will actually make more profit at lower efficiency so long as you supply enough volume. So as long as we know how our minimum required efficiency is at every incremental increase in spend we plan to make, we can scale. And again, very, very, very rudimentary. But this is what your target for scaling should look like. In fact, you should have multiple targets at every incremental increase in spend that number 1, that you can afford, and number 2, that you plan to make. Because again, as we've just seen, a 2.5 MER at 100K in spend looks very different and generates a very different profit than 50K in spend at a 3 MER. So as I'm looking in the account, or as I'm managing accounts, as I'm scaling, I have these targets in my mind. I know at 50K in spend, I need to be hitting a 3 MER. I know if I want to hit a 100K daily spend pace and push the account to 100K in a single month, if I'm not at a 2.5 MER, then I'm not generating enough volume to offset the loss in efficiency to make that scale worth it. So I have to pull back. And so scaling is a lot more dynamic than just let's increase our budget, see what happens. The return on ad spend is dropping. It's more so every incremental spend increase that I plan to make, what is my new efficiency required? And what is the total volume of profit that the business is taking home? So scaling, you need targets at every incremental increase in spend is the TLDR. So I have a spreadsheet linked below. Shout out to Nick Theriot. It's his sheet actually, but it's very, very simple. So you can calculate what those incremental increases are just like this. So you know, as you increase spend, what things to look for in the ad account. And as long as you are hitting those targets in the ad account, then you can keep going and you know your scale is effective and generating more volume of profit. So then the natural question after that becomes, now that we know we need incremental increase, we need targets at every incremental increase of spend. What is the most effective way to structure the ad account to make tracking the volume of profit generated as easy as possible so you can make clear decisions on when to increase spend? Let's talk through the best way to structure your Facebook ads or your meta ads in 2024 for scaling. And I just want to be clear, this is exactly how I structure accounts that are spending $50K a month all the way up to $500,000 a month to $1 million in a single month. And it's a very simple campaign. You're going to love this if you're not an expert in media buying or you just don't have a very strong technical background in media buying. But it's literally a one campaign CBO setup where we are testing new ads in the form of new ad sets into the CBO campaign. And ideally, we have at least one winner or one winner's ad set or a portfolio collection of ads that generate a predictable and profitable CPA. And then we test all of our new ad sets against those winning ads in a CBO campaign setup. And the main reason why we do that in this, or why we do CBO versus ABO, is if we go back to our example over here, right? How can we structure, right? We're focused on volume and we want to structure the account in such a way that tracking volume of profit is generated as tracking the volume of profit generated is as easy as possible. And if we do I just want to compare and contrast. It's very, very simple. If you're doing an ABO setup, for every individual campaign and budget that you have going on in the account, you need to track the ROI from the ads in order to make an effective scaling decision, as we've just defined, right? So if you have several ABO campaigns, and most ABO campaign accounts do not have 5 campaigns or 5 ad sets. They've usually got like 15 to 20 freaking ad sets. How in the world are you going to track the ROI from ads? And if you're looking at this example and looking across your account, which one should I increase spend on? If I have to track multiple ROIs from ads, and by the way, this is all fully reliant on attribution. So we're not even actually tracking the real ROI from every individual ad. We're tracking what Facebook or Northbeam or Triple Whale is telling me the ROI from these ads are. So I'm relying on attribution and the story told by attribution to create this mess of an ad account. And if we know we want to scale and in scaling, it's scaling the volume of profit, then how the hell am I supposed to decide what to scale in this instance? Do I go for this one maybe because it's got the highest volume, or do I scale this one because it needs a little bit more spend? Like, how in the world am I going to track this? And how in the world is this easy? If you contrast that with a CBO campaign setup, it is very simple. If I have one campaign in the ad account, that means I have one budget and I have one ad spend to worry about. My entire Facebook ad account is consolidated into a single campaign that allows me to directly track the ROI from ads as easy as possible. The connection between the ROI from ads generated from every incremental increase in spend becomes increasingly clear the fewer variables you have to keep track of in your ad account. Because if I increase my $50 budget to a $100 budget, or let's say I increase it from 50 to 200, how am I going to track what the additional profit generated is from that $100 increase in spend or $150 increase in spend when I have 6 other campaigns that are all spending potentially more, right? So it's very difficult to track. And that's why if you run ABO setups, you have difficulty scaling, is because you're making these decisions off of very, very limited data sets. Whereas if I have a CBO campaign, if I'm spending $1,000 right, on my campaign, I know I'm generating $3,000 in return. If I want to scale my ad account or scale my ads, all I have to do is worry about this one campaign and I can scale up the ad spend. And as long as the ROI from ads is doing what I want it to do and I'm hitting my targets, then I can literally just like do that. And if that sounds like an exaggeration, that's literally what I did to be able to scale this, like tripling the ad spend in a single month through a single campaign. So if you're having doubts about whether or not you can do that, you can, as proved by this. And you can triple your ad spend as long as you're hitting targets. All I have to do is just increase the budget, and there's only one thing to worry about, and that's why it's so great. And that is going to do it for today's video. If you enjoyed, make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Hope you got a ton of value out of this, and hopefully after watching this, you're able to take some learnings, implement them, action on them, and actually start scaling your ad account and your brand and your business today. Now, if you are interested in having me run your ads for you and helping you implement everything that we talked about in this video, then make sure you check out the first link in the description to have me run your ads. If you are a complete beginner and you want to start your first e-commerce business and scale it to its first $1,000 per day, then hit the second link in the description to join my private course and community, Guide to Your Ecom. Otherwise, I hope wherever you are in the world, you have an incredible rest of the day, and I will catch you guys soon. Peace.